The courtroom was silent when he said it.
You're lying. His voice carried no anger, only certainty. The kind that comes from money, power, and years of never being wrong. She stood there, hands trembling slightly over her stomach, eyes fixed on a point just above his shoulder. She had learned long ago that looking directly at men like him only made things worse.
I'm not, she said quietly. A faint smile touched his lips.
Not amusement, dismissal. You expect us to believe, he continued, turning slightly toward the judge, that a woman I met once, years ago, is now claiming to be pregnant with my child? Impossible. A ripple of murmurs moved through the room.
He was Ethan Blackwell. Tech billionaire. Public figure.
A man whose life was documented, audited, and scrutinized down to the minute. His lawyers sat behind him like a wall of steel.
She was Amelia Hart. A name no one recognized.
A woman with no press team, no fortune, and no protection. The judge adjusted his glasses. Ms. Hart, are you aware of the seriousness of your claim?
Yes, Amelia replied. Her voice was steady now.
That's why I waited so long.
Ethan let out a short laugh.
Waited? Or planned? That night, 3 years ago, had been brief. Forgettable to him, perhaps. A charity gala in London.
Too much champagne. A quiet balcony.
A conversation that felt oddly human.
He had left before dawn. She had gone back to her normal life.
Until her body began to change in ways doctors couldn't explain. At first, they told her it was stress.
Then a hormonal imbalance.
Then, finally, a specialist asked a question that changed everything. Have you ever been pregnant before?
She shook her head.
Because, the doctor said carefully, your body is behaving as though it has been.
But every test came back negative. No heartbeat. No fetus.
No explanation.
Until 6 weeks ago. That was when the impossible happened.
In the courtroom, Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. There is no pregnancy, he said flatly. My legal team has reviewed every medical document she submitted. Nothing supports her story. Amelia reached into her bag. Her lawyer stiffened. Amelia.
It's fine, she whispered. She pulled out a sealed envelope and handed it forward.
The judge opened it slowly, scanning the contents.
His brow furrowed. Ethan's smile faded. What is that? He asked.
A new medical report, the judge said. From a private research hospital in Zurich. Ethan scoffed. With all due respect, Your Honor, money can buy many things.
Yes, the judge replied. Including silence.
But this report isn't for sale.
He cleared his throat and read aloud.
The patient presents with a gestational anomaly previously undocumented in modern medicine. A delayed embryonic development, undetectable by standard testing for over 2 years.
The room erupted.
Ethan stood up. That's absurd. The judge raised a hand. Mr. Blackwell, sit down. Amelia's hands moved instinctively to her stomach. The judge continued. The report concludes that the pregnancy is real, viable, and, most concerning, genetically linked to you.
Silence crashed down harder than any gavel.
Ethan's face drained of color. That's not possible, he said, this time less certain. I would have known. My doctors. Your doctors, Amelia said softly, finally meeting his eyes, weren't checking my body.
Something flickered across his expression. Not fear. Not anger. Recognition.
The judge wasn't finished. Mr. Blackwell, the court is ordering a supervised DNA verification using the Zurich findings as reference. Ethan's lawyer leaned in urgently, whispering.
Ethan waved him off.
He stared at Amelia as though seeing her for the first time, not as an inconvenience, not as a liar, but as a variable he had failed to control. You waited, he said slowly.
Why now? Amelia swallowed.
Because the doctors say what's happening to me, to us, can't be stopped anymore.
The judge paused.
Explain.
Amelia took a breath.
They say the pregnancy didn't just begin.
It's been adapting.
Waiting until my body, and the world, could see it. Ethan laughed again, but this time it cracked. You're saying my child decided when to exist. I'm saying, she replied, that some things don't care how powerful you are.
The judge adjourned the session temporarily. As the room began to move, Ethan remained seated. Amelia, he said suddenly.
She turned. If this is true, he said quietly, everything changes.
She nodded. I know.
What neither of them said, what no one in that courtroom yet understood, was that the Zurich report had a second page. A page Amelia hadn't submitted. A page that suggested the pregnancy was not only impossible,
but unprecedented. And that was when the real consequences were about to begin.
Ethan discovered the second page that evening. It arrived not through lawyers or court clerks, but through a secure email marked confidential, forwarded anonymously, though he already knew the source.
Zurich didn't make mistakes, and they didn't scare easily.
If they had written a second page, it meant something had gone wrong. He read it alone in his penthouse, the city lights of London stretching below him like a map he once believed he owned. The embryonic genome exhibits non-standard stability patterns, the report read. Cellular replication suggests adaptive sequencing, responding dynamically to environmental stresses and maternal physiology.
This is not mutation. This is design.
Ethan closed the file, his heartbeat suddenly too loud.
Design implied intention.
For the first time in his life, he felt unqualified to understand something. The following morning, Amelia was admitted to a private medical wing under court protection. Not for luxury, though it was comfortable, but for observation.
Too many anomalies had already occurred.
Her vitals fluctuated in ways that made seasoned doctors exchange glances they tried to hide. "You're not in danger," one of them assured her.
But they were lying. She could feel it.
At night, when the machines quieted and the corridors emptied, she felt movement. Not kicks, not flutters, but something deeper. As though her body were hosting a presence that listened.
She placed her hand on her stomach. "I didn't plan this," she whispered.
"I just didn't walk away." Ethan visited 2 days later.
No cameras. No press. Just him.
He stood at the doorway longer than necessary, uncertain how to enter a room where power meant nothing. Amelia looked smaller in the hospital bed, but stronger somehow, like a center of gravity he was being pulled toward against his will. "They won't let me speak to the doctors," he said. "They say you're the patient."
"They are right," she replied. He stepped closer.
"I need to understand."
She studied him. "Do you?"
"Yes. That's new."
He didn't argue.
"They say the pregnancy adapted to me," she continued.
"My stress. My fear.
My body learned to hide it because the world wouldn't accept it."
Ethan exhaled slowly. "And now?"
"Now it doesn't need to hide."
He sat down.
For a man used to controlling outcomes, this uncertainty felt like standing at the edge of something vast and dark. "My lawyers want to fight this," he admitted. "They say we can bury it."
Amelia smiled sadly.
"You can't bury something that wants to be seen." Her monitor beeped, sharp and sudden. Doctors rushed in. Ethan stepped back as numbers spiked and dipped too quickly to follow. "It's reacting," one of them said.
"To what?" No one answered.
That night, Zurich sent another message. This time directly to Ethan. "We recommend containment, not exposure. If the data becomes public, it will challenge foundational assumptions of human development."
Ethan stared at the words.
Containment meant secrecy.
Control.
Familiar territory. But when he returned to Amelia's room, she was awake, eyes fixed on the window. "They're afraid," she said. "Yes."
"So are you." He didn't deny it.
"The child is responding to conflict," she continued.
"When you argue.
When they threaten. When they lie."
He frowned. "How could you know that?" She looked at him.
"Because I feel it calm when you're honest." Something shifted between them then, not trust, not love, but recognition of shared responsibility. The next court session was chaos.
The Zurich findings had leaked.
Scientists, ethicists, investors, governments, everyone wanted access. The pregnancy was no longer a legal dispute, it was a global question.
Ethan's board demanded statements. His stock wavered. Sponsors withdrew. Others doubled down.
Amelia was no longer anonymous. Her past was dissected publicly, her motives questioned, her body turned into a headline. "She planned this," commentators said. "She's dangerous," others warned. Amelia watched it all in silence. The child moved again, stronger this time, and the monitors recorded something new, a rhythmic pattern not matching any known fetal signature. A doctor whispered, "It's synchronizing."
"With what?" another asked. No one answered.
Ethan stood before the media days later, suit immaculate, expression carefully neutral. "I won't deny responsibility," he said. But I will not allow fear to dictate truth.
Behind the cameras, Amelia watched the broadcast. That will cost you, she murmured. He found her afterwards. I know, he said.
But I won't let them turn this into a weapon.
She studied his face.
You've never given up control before.
No, he replied.
I've just never met something I couldn't own. Another wave of movement rippled through her body, sharp enough to steal her breath.
Alarms sounded. Doctors rushed in again.
This isn't normal progression, one said. The development rate is accelerating.
Ethan's voice was tight.
How fast?
The doctor hesitated.
Weeks are compressing into hours.
Amelia clutched the sheets.
It's coming early. No, another doctor corrected softly. It's coming when it's ready. Outside the hospital, protests formed, some calling it a miracle, others a threat. Governments requested jurisdiction. Zurich withdrew cooperation, citing ethical uncertainty. In the chaos, a final message appeared on Amelia's tablet.
No sender. Just text. You are not alone.
We have been waiting.
She stared at the screen, heart pounding.
Ethan returned just as she looked up.
They know, she said. Who? She swallowed.
I don't think this ends with us.
Ethan felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Who is we? He asked. Amelia shook her head slowly. I don't know.
But whatever this is, it's bigger than a courtroom, bigger than your company, bigger than me. Before he could respond, her tablet went dark. The message erased itself, leaving no trace. Yet the air in the room felt altered, as though something unseen had passed through and decided to stay. The doctors returned, speaking in low, urgent tones. Amelia's scans no longer behaved like scans. Images distorted, lines of data refusing to stabilize. One technician whispered that the readings were changing depending on who stood closest to the bed. Step back, another said to Ethan. Reluctantly, he did. The numbers shifted again. Bring him closer, the lead physician said after a pause. Ethan hesitated, then stepped forward. The monitors steadied. No one spoke for several seconds. That's not possible, someone finally murmured. Amelia closed her eyes. It recognizes him. Ethan stared at the screen, his reflection faintly visible in the glass. Recognizes? As what? No one answered him. By morning, the hospital was under lockdown. Officially for Amelia's safety. Unofficially because too many powerful people were demanding access. Military advisors called it a potential biosecurity risk. Scientists called it the most important discovery in human history. Social media called it a sign. Amelia called it exhaustion. Sleep came in fragments. When she did drift off, she dreamed of voices, not words, but intentions. A sense of waiting stretched across time, patient and precise. Ethan stayed nearby, sleeping little, reading everything Zurich had ever published. Patterns emerged where none should exist. Adaptive development. Predictive responses. The pregnancy wasn't merely reacting, it was anticipating. On the third night, Amelia woke suddenly, gasping. Ethan was at her side instantly. What is it? It showed me something, she whispered. Showed you what? She searched his face, as if deciding how much truth he could bear. A memory. Not mine. The lights flickered. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, though the forecast had promised clear skies. Amelia continued, voice trembling. It wasn't human. Not like us. But it wasn't hostile either. It was careful. Ethan felt a chill. You're saying the child is sharing memories? Not memories, she corrected. Intentions. Plans that started long before either of us existed. He ran a hand through his hair. This is madness. Is it? She asked gently. Or is it just unfamiliar? Before he could respond, alarms sounded again, different this time. Lower, more urgent. A security officer appeared at the door. Mr. Blackwell, you need to see this. They stepped into the corridor, where screens displayed satellite feeds and data streams Ethan had never been cleared to access before. What am I looking at? He asked. Global anomalies, the officer replied. Electromagnetic fluctuations. Atmospheric pressure shifts. All centered on this location. Ethan's jaw tightened. You're telling me this pregnancy is affecting the planet? We're telling you, the officer said carefully, that something is synchronizing on a global scale. Back in the room, Amelia sat upright, hands gripping the sheets. Her breathing was calm now, too calm. They are afraid it's an invasion, Ethan said.
She looked at him sharply.
Is it?
He hesitated.
That's what scares me, she said softly. No one's asking what it wants. As if in response, the machines emitted a soft chime. A new waveform appeared on the screen. Complex, repeating, intentional. It's communicating, a technician whispered. Amelia closed her eyes, tears slipping down her temples.
It's saying it didn't choose violence.
It chose patience.
Ethan swallowed hard.
Why now?
Because something is about to happen, she replied.
Something we've been building toward without knowing. Outside the hospital, the city buzzed with rumors.
Markets fluctuated wildly. Religious leaders issued statements. Governments convened emergency sessions. Every narrative tried to claim ownership of the unknown.
Inside, Amelia's condition stabilized, then changed entirely. Her scans showed rapid structural development, but not along any known timeline. Organs matured out of sequence, neural pathways forming with startling efficiency. One doctor leaned back, pale. This isn't a child developing. Ethan turned to him.
Then what is it? The doctor hesitated.
It's an interface.
Amelia's eyes snapped open. No, she said firmly.
It's alive.
The doctor nodded slowly.
Those things aren't mutually exclusive. That evening, Ethan received a call he had hoped never to take.
A joint task force. Global authority. They wanted custody.
They want to take it, Amelia said when he told her. They say it's for safety.
She laughed weakly.
Whose?
Ethan knelt beside her bed.
I won't let them. You might not have a choice. I always have a choice, he said, then paused.
Don't I? She reached for his hand. Her grip was strong.
You do now. The lights dimmed again, this time deliberately. Screens across the room filled with symbols, patterns repeating in ways that made the human eye ache. A voice filled the space. Not sound, not thought, but something between.
Clear. Calm.
Unavoidable. We have waited long enough.
Every person in the room froze.
Ethan felt the words settle into him like a truth he had always been moving toward. Amelia smiled through tears. It's begun. The voice did not echo, yet it filled every corner of the room, settling into minds rather than ears. Monitors continued to beep, but the sound felt distant, irrelevant, like background noise to something far older and more deliberate. Ethan's knees weakened. He reached for the bed, steadying himself as though gravity itself had shifted.
Who are you? Someone whispered. No one knew who had spoken. The response came gently.
We are not singular. Amelia exhaled, relief and fear woven together. You're speaking through the child. Yes.
A doctor found his voice. Why her?
Why now? The pause that followed felt intentional, as though the answer required care. She survived.
Ethan frowned.
Survived what? Amelia's fingers tightened around his hand. Images flooded her mind, centuries compressed into moments.
Plagues. Collapses.
Silent extinctions no history book had recorded because no one remained to write them down. Civilizations that had reached too far, too fast, and burned themselves out. We have observed, the voice continued. We have intervened before.
A scientist shook his head violently.
There's no evidence of. There is, Amelia said quietly. You just called them myths. The screens shifted again, displaying patterns that resolved into something disturbingly familiar. Earth, rendered in data and probability, branching futures fracturing outward like veins. Your species reaches thresholds, the voice said. When balance fails, correction follows.
Ethan's throat went dry.
And this time, it replied, you were close to correcting yourselves.
The room held its breath.
Close isn't enough, the voice continued. But it is promising. Amelia felt warmth spread through her body, not painful, not soothing, focused. Purposeful. You chose me because I wouldn't break, she said. You broke many times, the voice replied. You rebuilt. Ethan stared at her, seeing not fragility now, but resilience honed by years of being unseen.
You never told me how hard it was.
You never asked, she said softly. The voice shifted, addressing him directly. You command systems that shape millions of lives.
Ethan straightened instinctively.
I build technology. You build influence, it corrected. And influence accelerates collapse or convergence. What do you want from me?
Ethan asked. Choice, the voice said.
Made consciously.
The monitors flared.
Amelia gasped, not in pain, but in effort. They can't stay long like this, she said. This connection, it's temporary.
We do not require permanence, the voice replied.
Only alignment. Outside, sirens wailed.
The lockdown perimeter tightened. Someone shouted orders down the corridor.
They are coming, a security officer said. They've authorized extraction. Ethan felt something unfamiliar rise within him. Not fear, but defiance stripped of ego.
No, he said.
They are not taking her.
The voice seemed almost amused.
Conflict is unnecessary.
Amelia shook her head.
They won't listen.
They will, the voice replied. To you.
The screens across the room flickered, then connected, live feeds from news stations, government chambers, command centers around the world. Ethan realized what was happening too late. You're broadcasting, he whispered.
We are revealing, the voice corrected.
Amelia squeezed her eyes shut as words poured through her, clear, undeniable, carrying no threat, only inevitability. The voice spoke not of domination, but of consequence.
Of systems pushed past tolerance.
Of a future where survival required cooperation beyond borders, beyond profit, beyond pride.
Markets halted mid-transaction. Leaders froze mid-sentence.
Weapons systems powered down, not by force, but by choice, because for the first time, every outcome was visible. Ethan watched faces on the screens change from outrage to disbelief to something dangerously close to understanding. They are seeing it, he breathed. Amelia sagged back against the pillows, exhausted. They are seeing themselves.
The voice softened. This child is not a ruler. Not a weapon.
It is a signal. A doctor whispered. A signal of what?
That you are not alone, it replied. And never were.
The connection began to fade. Screens dimmed. The pressure in the room eased. No, Amelia whispered. Wait.
We will, the voice said. But not like this.
The presence withdrew, leaving behind silence so complete it rang. Amelia's breathing slowed. The monitor stabilized into patterns recognizably human once more. Ethan brushed hair from her forehead, hands trembling now that adrenaline had no purpose. You did it.
We did, she corrected.
Outside, the shouting stopped.
A nurse stepped in hesitantly.
Dave stood down.
Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The doctor stared at the scans, eyes wide. Development has slowed. Normalized. Amelia smiled faintly.
It's waiting again. For what?
Ethan asked.
She looked at him, then at the screens, now dark but heavy with what they had shown. For us to decide who we're going to be when it arrives.
The world did not end that night. That surprised everyone.
There were no earthquakes, no fire from the sky, no collapse of civilization. Instead, something far more unsettling happened. Nothing exploded, yet everything shifted. In the days that followed, governments spoke in careful tones.
Emergency meetings became permanent councils.
Markets reopened, but they no longer behaved the same way, as if confidence itself had learned caution. Technologies once rushed to deployment were suddenly paused, questioned, re-evaluated. For the first time, humanity hesitated, not out of fear, but awareness. Amelia remained in the hospital, protected not by secrecy anymore, but by consensus.
No nation claimed her. No authority dared to move without scrutiny.
The world had seen too much to pretend ignorance again. Ethan stayed with her.
Not because lawyers advised it. Not because cameras watched.
But because something inside him had fractured and rebuilt itself into something quieter, heavier, and more honest. One evening, as rain traced slow lines down the window, Amelia broke the silence.
It's different now, she said.
Ethan looked up from the chair beside her bed.
How?
It's not hiding anymore, she replied, resting her hand on her stomach.
But it's not rushing either.
It's observing.
Ethan nodded. He had learned not to argue with things he could not measure.
You know, he said after pause, I built my life believing intelligence was something we created.
Code. Systems. Control.
She smiled faintly. And now? And now I realize intelligence was watching us long before we learned to watch ourselves. Outside, the world debated whether the child should be called a miracle, a warning, or a bridge.
Scientists argued over terminology.
Faith leaders searched ancient texts for echoes. Philosophers returned to questions humanity had avoided for centuries.
But the child did not answer debates. It responded only to intention.
When decisions were made in fear, Amelia felt tension. When choices leaned toward cooperation, her body eased.
Patterns emerged, subtle, undeniable.
The child was not judging humanity.
It was reflecting it.
Months passed. The pregnancy progressed, slowly now, deliberately. No more impossible acceleration.
No more global surges.
As if the signal had been sent, and now patience had returned. One night, Amelia woke Ethan with a sharp intake of breath, not pain, but clarity.
It's time, she whispered. Doctors arrived calmly.
No alarms screamed.
No chaos erupted.
The room felt prepared. As Amelia labored, something extraordinary happened, not in the sky, not on screens, but within people. Across the world, reports surfaced of sudden stillness.
Enemies paused mid-conflict.
Arguments lost urgency. Not peace, something deeper.
Perspective.
Ethan held Amelia's hand as she pushed through exhaustion and fear, grounded by a strength she never knew she possessed until it was required of her.
When the child was born, there was no blinding light. No voice filled the room. Just a cry. Human. Fragile. Real.
Doctors stared in disbelief as scans confirmed what seemed impossible after everything that had occurred. The child's biology was now entirely compatible with humanity.
No anomalies. No adaptive surges.
One doctor whispered, "It's normal." Amelia smiled through tears. It chose to be. Ethan looked at the child, his child, and felt something he had never felt before, responsibility without ownership. The world waited for something else to happen.
Nothing did.
And that, perhaps, was the greatest revelation of all. Years later, the story would be told in fragments.
Some would exaggerate it. Others would deny it entirely.
Children would learn about it in classrooms, long after the fear had faded into history.
But the effects remained. Technology evolved more carefully. Power decentralized.
Humanity did not become perfect, but it became conscious of consequence. A species aware that it was no longer alone in its own reflection. As for the child, they grew quietly.
No powers.
No proclamations. Just an uncanny ability to listen, and to make people listen in return. One afternoon, as Ethan watched them play in the garden, Amelia joined him. "Do you think it will come back?" he asked.
She shook her head. "I don't think it ever left." He smiled, a little sadly.
"And if we fail again?" She looked at their child, laughing under the open sky. "Then we won't fail alone." Ethan exhaled, finally understanding. The impossible pregnancy had never been about creating something beyond humanity. It had been about reminding humanity what it could become.
When it chose truth over control,
empathy over power, and responsibility over denial. And that choice, once seen, could never be unseen again.